it is because of those very people in my community who didn't have a whole lot, but wanted to make sure that I was afforded opportunity. I wouldn't be here today without them. And so for me, that goes back to my why. And that's why every day when I wake up, I'm thinking about impact. I'm thinking about how do I take people like the very people who made it possible for me to be here today. How do I take those people who are often pushed to the margins, whether it's a big tech company that's, marketing to them, or it's, politicians who are making decisions on their behalf that impact their lives. How do I take all that I have gained, all the experiences, all the influence that I have, and help take those people who are often pushed to the margins and put them back to the center? And so for me, it's always goes back to how I was not only raised, but the importance that the people that helped raise me, what they've done in my life, because if it wasn't for them, I certainly wouldn't be on this podcast with you today.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Marshall. Welcome back to the Black to Business Podcast. So excited to dive into today's conversation, and we're talking all about how to get out of your own way and step into your power. Now, the reason I wanted to have this discussion on the podcast is because I know that you've probably dealt with it, and I know I have dealt with this feeling of, I want to hit this goal, I want to do this thing, I want to do this for my business, or I want to do it in my personal life, and there's absolutely nothing stopping you or this one person, and it's you. You're in your own way. So today, I want to talk about how can we start to get out of our own way so that we are living in our purpose, so that we're doing the things that we need to do in our business to make sure that we're making the impact that we were meant to make. So joining me today on the show is the perfect person to have this discussion, and I'm so excited to have Miss Jotaka Eaddy on the show, and I want to share a little bit about her before we dive into the conversation. Jotaka is an award-winning strategist, advocate, and connector who Forbes Magazine describes as the Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley. With more than 20 years of experience in policy, advocacy, and movement building, Jotaka is a highly sought-after speaker and strategist whose accomplishments include her trailblazing election as the University of South Carolina's first Black woman student body president, her groundbreaking work that led to the abolition of the juvenile death penalty in America through the 2005 landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision in Roper Vs Simmons. She's also the founder of the Full Circle Strategies, LLC, where she leads a team of individuals committed to advancing transformative change and global impact for clients, including corporate nonprofit foundations, technology, and government organizations seeking to advance policy ideas and change. Her clients and work includes advising Oprah Winfrey's Own Network's award-winning Own Your Vote campaign, advising and managing external strategies to engage diverse communities for global telecom firms, and supporting the expansion of tech policy and platform changes aimed at increasing inclusive tech for some of the world's largest tech companies and venture firms, among others. The beautiful, beautiful thing about all of this is that Jotaka is going to share in our conversation how she has been able to accomplish all of this, and the fact that she's from a small town in South Carolina and who have been doing amazing things. And I think it was so great to have her on the show, because one of the things we're going to talk about is during this process and all of her accomplishments, she still dealt with having self-doubt. And she's going to talk about how she overcame those thoughts, and also how you can deal with failure and tips for building your own confidence and driving impact. So this is definitely a treat. So let's dive in. Jotaka, welcome to the Black to Business Podcast. I am very, very, very excited to have you on the show. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, we are going to be talking all about the amazing work that you are doing, have been doing, and continuing to do. And also just diving into your story and encouraging my listeners on how to get out of their own way and step into their power. So before we dive in, I always like to ask my guests if you could just share a little bit about who you are, what is it that you do in your business, and how you kind of got where you are today.
Wow. Well, first of all, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
I get that question a lot, and I, I always lead with I am a Black woman that grew up in rural South Carolina on a dirt road in a very small town. And I am someone that I guess I would mostly describe myself as an advocate, as a business leader, as a connector. But more importantly, I really view myself as someone that is constantly trying to move the needle of impact forward. And I have since as a young child wanted to create and help make the world just a bit better than it was when I came into it. And that's really what I'm all about and the work that I strive to do every day, whether it is in business, whether it's in personal and or philanthropy, or if it's in advocacy work that I do through organizations.
I love it. And like I stated before we started this call, just like I was truly inspired by all the work that you're doing. You've done so much and you are truly making the world a better place. And I kind of want to dive into your commitment to doing the work in advancing transformative change and global impact. So you have over 20 years of experience in policy and movement building. And you're also known as the Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley. I want you to first share like the details of the work that you do in Full Circle Strategies LLC and about your journey in movement building and policy.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you for that question. So at Full Circle Strategies, we are a social impact and political consulting firm, and we work with a wide array of clients ranging from amazing clients across the board, from telecommunications companies to tech companies to nonprofits and venture firms, to help them build transformative relationships with the express goal of creating impact. Whether that impact is in the lives of consumers that they touch every day, or if that impact is with communities in which they seek to reach and or partner with. But for us at Full Circle Strategies, we work with our clients to create innovative activations and programs. But in addition, to really help our clients understand the power of transformative relationships and the power of transformative action that can help not only advance their business goals, but also advance the greater good in society. We like to think of it as the double bottom line, and helping companies and organizations scale that double bottom line of reaching their own goals, but also in doing so, how do they actually increase the public good, and how do they make the lives of those that either they are selling to or that they are working on behalf of more enriched. And that's the work that we do every day at Full Circle Strategies.
Amazing. And when I mentioned the fact that as I was doing my research, you're known as the Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley, I wanted to talk about also like why was it important for you to touch on or just focus on increasing diversity and impact metrics in the tech sector? Like why did you feel that this was important to focus on and some of the things that you've experienced and seen?
You know, I I really stumbled into Silicon Valley, to be quite honest. I
Yeah.
It wasn't an industry that I was thinking about. I
Mm-hmm.
honestly didn't even know a lot about the industry. And at the time, I was senior advisor to the president of the NAACP, and I received a call, and it was, basically it summed up. It was, hey, we think that there's a great opportunity for you to join this company in Silicon Valley. And I was like, whoa, okay, what is Silicon Valley? I didn't even know what it was. I was very hesitant because of a number of factors. One, I didn't really see a reflection of myself in the industry. I didn't think, nor did I believe that I had the skill set to enter the industry or be successful in the industry. And so because of all of those reasons and more, I was very hesitant, but I was recruited. I was, there was an outbound call to me, and I had conversations with the leadership of this financial technology company that was at the time really pioneering in redefining payments for largely unbanked and underbanked consumers. And what I soon learned was that technology really was the wave of the future. And so this is 2013. So this is well before, Silicon Valley was a household name. And so there was very few people like myself, more policy based or advocacy based leaders that had transitioned into Silicon Valley. Quite frankly, I think, David Plouffe had kind of famously left the Obama administration and went into Uber, and Lisa Jackson had left the EPA as the head of the EPA and went to Apple. But there were very few. And I believe I was probably in that first batch of people like, politicos that went into Silicon Valley. And this is 2013. And what I was committed to doing was just taking the skill set that I had built over the years through the various work that I had did and taking it into Silicon Valley, but not just the skill set, but also the mindset. Because what I knew going into Silicon Valley was that it was not as diverse as it should be, given how technology was really being utilized and an overperformance of particularly people of color and utilizing tech platforms, but yet there still was a lack of representation of us not only working in these companies, but also at the leadership of these companies and in the C-suites of these companies, on the boards of these companies, and at the decision-making level of who's funding these companies. And so for me, after a lot of hesitation, what I soon realized was that it was important for people like myself with my mindset and my skill set to go into this industry to not only help redefine and help push this industry, but also to help open the door and be a representation of what was possible. And I'm very proud not only of the work that I have been able to do in the industry, but really how many people who have, saw my pathway, who have now entered into the industry. And there are countless friends and colleagues that have left administrations, whether it's the White House or Capitol Hill or other civil rights institutions, and said to me, I see what you did. I want to do what you did. And to see so many of them strategically place, whether it's at companies such as Google or Facebook or Amazon, Meta, all of the companies, Twitter, all of these companies, Pinterest, I'm just so proud of just the plethora of advocates that soon after I went into the industry, they said, I want to do what you did. And I believe as a result of all of them being in the industry, that the industry is better, that there are people that are helping make decisions to drive these companies that have a worldview and a conviction that's rooted in justice, that's rooted in civil and human rights, that's rooted in a deep understanding of our community. And for that, that's sort of one of those things that, it's never written on paper, but it's the thing that that you are a part of helping do. And for me, helping transform the industry in just a subtle way of just being a beacon and a visual representation of what is possible, and hopefully, having inspired people to take their rightful place in the industry is something that I'm deeply proud of.
Mm. I love it, and I'm so proud and true trailblazer and just making that impact. And I see it, and I love the work that you're doing and have done and continue to do. And speaking of the White House and Capitol Hill, so you were very instrumental in galvanizing the collective power of Black women in the 2020 election and Georgia runoff, and ultimately the success of the inauguration of our first Black woman VP, Kamala Harris. Can you speak to what this moment meant for you and your role in, this moment?
Oh, wow. I mean, I literally could still feel the sun hitting my face as I
Mm-hmm.
sat outside that day at the inauguration. I was one of the very blessed and fortunate
Mm-hmm.
few people that attended the inauguration of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. And I'll never forget, I sat beside Yolanda Caraway, who is a pioneer in politics and just the work in America to move us forward. And I just remembered feeling so much pride and so much emotion to watch Vice President Kamala Harris take that oath. I thought about the legacy and the brave women who came before her, who paved the way so that she could take that oath and so that we could actually be sitting in that audience
Right.
to witness that. And I thought about my own grandmothers. I thought about so many women like my grandmothers, my own mother, and so many women, countless women who, may not be named in history books, but they sacrificed so that we could enjoy and see that moment. And so it was very much for me a full circle moment to be there to witness. And I think for Black women everywhere, it was a culmination of a lot of hard work that Black women did during the 2020 election
Mm-hmm.
to turn out voters, to advocate for the rightful place of Black women on that ballot, and to do the work to ensure that those Black women that were on the ballot were elected into office. And so I think it's important for us to recognize that that work didn't just start
Right.
overnight, that the work that we did at Win with Black Women was built on years and years of work of women that came years before us that laid a foundation so that we can step onto that foundation and help push over the finish line what we believed and what I still believe was a gap in our democracy, and that was the full recognition and the rightful placement of Black women at the highest offices in this land.
So beautifully said and amazing. And one of the things that really touched me is that you spoke about like brave women, and you're a brave woman. Your story is very brave. And the beautiful thing about it is that you have gotten amazing other Black women, brave Black women with you. So I want to talk about, like you mentioned, your organization, Win with Black Women. What inspired you to create the organization and some of the work that you all are doing?
Yeah, so Win with Black Women really was inspired out of just frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Often, sometimes some of the best things that are created when you just had enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting at home, it was during the pandemic, and I saw, another news clipping. And it was during the time where there was a lot of conversation about who was going to be the vice presidential candidate on the Democratic ticket. And there were amazing Black women who were being named. Their names were bubbling up from Ambassador Susan Rice to Congresswoman Karen Bass, Congresswoman Val Demings, Stacey Abrams, ultimately Vice President Kamala Harris. Many of them whom I've known and have been friends with for many years. And what I sat there and I saw them systematically, one by one, engaging in character assassination of each one of these brilliant Black women who all were capable of being on that ticket. And as I sat there, what I recognized was that if we allowed in this moment for there to be character assassination of each one of these women who, just by the nature of just being excellent, and were being named as potential vice presidential running mate, but if we allowed society to character assassinate these brilliant, bold women, then what would that say about Black women everywhere?
Mm-hmm.
And I was really upset. And I called a mentor friend, Mignon Moore, and I said, oh my goodness, Mignon, this is wrong. We have to do something about this. We have to speak out against this. They are tearing down each one of these women. And every time they do this, it's taking them potentially out of the running. So it's sabotaging our opportunity to have a Black woman as a vice presidential running mate, but it is also tearing down Black women everywhere. And what is that going to do to little Black girls in the future?
Right.
And she remarked to me, and I basically asked, what was she and her colleagues, her friends, the colored girls, what are y'all going to do? And she said, what are you going to do? And I remember hanging the phone up, and I sat there for 20 minutes, and I was at home in South Carolina. And I said, I have to do something. So I picked up my computer. I actually picked up my phone. And I started typing emails from the top of my head and ended up with 65 emails of friends that I had worked with along the way. Friends from Silicon Valley, friends from the entertainment industry, friends from politics and movement building. And sent an email and said, hey, I think we all need to hop on a Zoom and gather. And let's come up with a strategy. Let's create a hashtag. Let's push back. Let's unite as Black women, and let's let them know that they are not going to attack these Black women, and further, that it's time for a Black woman to be as at the top of the ticket as vice presidential running mate. And that night, 90 women got on a call, and it ranged from Dr. Janetta Besh-Cole to friends like Angela Rye and Tamika Mallory to politicos like Donna Brazile and entertainment industry leaders like Ruth Carter, Oscar-winning Ruth Carter, to Silicon Valley execs like Morgan DeBron. And we all began to invite friends. And over the next 2 years, Win with Black Women would become a movement. We now have more than 4,000 Black women leaders ranging from every industry a part of this network. We continue to meet on most Sunday nights, and we've done some remarkable work together. We've helped create and make an impact in the 2020 election, which resulted in Vice President Kamala Harris. We've weighed in alongside Black women-led organizations around the nomination and confirmation of the nation's first Black woman Supreme Court justice, the nation's first Black woman to be on the Federal Reserve Board. And so many cabinet members, but we haven't just worked in the area of politics. We've brought ourselves together and we lend our voices to issues impacting Black women, whether it's, boldly calling for our sister Brittany Griner to come home and making very clear that we support our sister Brittany Griner and that we will not stop fighting until she is home. Or whether it's uplifting Black women in corporate America or Black women in media and entertainment around projects that they're creating, whether it's the Woman King or whether it's seeing sisters leaders like Tiffany Cross have her own show on MSNBC, or Joyanne Reid and supporting that. Ultimately, our belief at Win with Black Women is that Black women, we win when we are united, when we're together, when we support each other. And when Black women are together, I've certainly believed that America wins with us.
In this, I just, so many things came up for me when you were saying those things and just all the things that you've done. I think about, your childhood, like how did this little girl from rural South Carolina do all this, be brave enough to do all this. Like, can you talk about like what shaped your future? Like, was it some exposure? Was it your family? Like, what gave you the power, the fearlessness to go into this, to accomplish this?
I mean, it first starts with my family. You know, I have
Mm-hmm.
very beautiful and loving parents. Both my mother and my father
Mm-hmm.
have really played an important role in just who I am. My mother always told me that I can be anything. I always remember she would say, you know, always root. I want you to shoot for the moon, not the stars, because if you slip, you're just going to be where you belong, and that's amongst the stars. And I always remember that.
Wow.
And I grew up in a very small town. My town has a population of about 1,400 people.
Wow.
And I grew up on a dirt road and one red light town. We now have two red lights in the town. But when I was growing up, we only had one red light. And I grew up in a church that really poured into the young people. And I really got my motivation from giving Easter speeches. I think it's a thing. I think
What?
in the Black tradition, you know, Easter, you had to do that Easter speech. I'll never forget. My grandma used to be like, you better get that Easter speech right. You better get it right. And it was like, I think she had like a competition with her sister, my aunt, and
Wow.
whose grandchild was going to do the best. And so I would, you know, go up and I would memorize my Easter speech. And I remember I used
Mm-hmm.
to love doing it. And they would always give me an extra long Easter speech. And I would get up there and I would be in Jesus rose. And I would just have a good time with it. And the crowd treated me as if I was giving a grand address. I mean, they
Mm.
would clap and they would yell for me. And that just really boosted my confidence. And it just made me okay with going in front of people. And I always was a very gregarious child. I always liked to talk to people. But that really, really gave me a lot of courage. And also another real key factor for me was the support of my community. I would,
Yes.
you know, as a result of, you know, being in debate team and oratorical contest, you know, because of that, confidence that was built giving Easter speeches, I would be invited to national conferences. And the first time that I was invited to a national conference, it cost $3,000. And it was $3,000 extra that my parents didn't have. But it was the people of my community, and particularly the Black women of my church, who said that baby girl is going to go to Washington.
Mm.
And my community raised money and they held bake sales and dinner sales to build the resources to send me to Washington, D.C., to a conference in which I would meet people that would create a lasting impact on my life. And it is because of those very people in my community who didn't have a whole lot, but wanted to make sure that I was afforded opportunity. I wouldn't be here today without them. And so for me, that is goes back to my why. And that's why every day when I wake up, I'm thinking about impact. I'm thinking about how do I take people like the very people who made it possible for me to be here today. How do I take those people who are often pushed to the margins, whether it's a big tech company that's, you know, marketing to them, or it's, you know, politicians who are making decisions on their behalf that impact their lives. How do I take all that I have gained, all the experiences, all the influence that I have, and help take those people who are often pushed to the margins and put them back to the center? And so for me, it's always goes back to how I was not only raised, but the importance that the people that helped raise me, what they've done in my life. Because if it wasn't for them, I certainly wouldn't be on this podcast with you today.
Mm. So beautiful. So glad that you shared that, and just sharing with people the importance of community. Like you said, no matter how small, people didn't have to give, but they gave in some kind of way, like some type of support is not always monetarily. I want to talk about, like, for someone who's listening that doesn't have that community and just the topic of getting out of your own way, like, what would you say to that person if they have this goal, this vision, but sometimes they feel like it's bigger than them, and they are not able to get to it? Like, what advice would you give them?
The advice that I often give when asked this question is, it's just number one, you are enough.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a society that values this idea of highlight reels. And it gives this false sense when you look at social media and you just really see the highlights of people's lives. You don't ever see the reality that, people have low days equally as if they have high days. But often we just see the highlights and we begin to compare ourselves to those highlights. And I think it's important for us to recognize that we are enough, that we are perfectly imperfect as human beings, and that opportunity is out there is really for us to grapple and to take. And we will often, and I've been certainly have had experience with this, where there have been opportunities and I've been reluctant to take those opportunities because I didn't think that I was enough. When I was recruited into Silicon Valley, here I was. I had helped win a U.S. Supreme Court case that abolished the juvenile death penalty. I had lobbied in the United Nations. I had helped change voting rights laws. I had helped change the state constitution in the state of Delaware that resulted in people that were returning citizens to have their voting rights back. But yet I did not think that I could be successful in Silicon Valley. And I had almost self-selected myself out of an opportunity that ultimately would change my life, my livelihood, and my opportunity to build generational wealth for myself and my community. And I was able to get out of my own way. And I think we have to get out of our own way, get out of our own heads, get out of our own doubts, and just get out there and do it. And the reality is that, yes, is there a chance that we might fail, we might fall? Absolutely. The most important thing is that we always have an opportunity to get back up. And that's all we have to do. We often will experience failure. I've certainly experienced my fair share of failure. But what I've learned often is that in those moments where I've been knocked down, I've learned more in the process of getting back up. Mm-hmm. And I've become more resilient when I've gotten back up. And I've become better when I've gotten back up. And I think that if we can just focus on taking those opportunities and recognizing that if and when we do fall, as long as we get back up, then that's half the battle right there.
So powerful. Jotaka, this has been amazing. And I'm pretty sure people who are listening are wanting to know, like, what's next for you? What are you up to these days? If you could just share some of the things that you're doing at Full Circle Strategies, if someone wants to work with you, and also, just like anything that is coming up, please do share.
Yes, well, we are really continuing to focus on driving impact at Full Circle Strategies. For more information to follow the work that we're doing, you can visit us on LinkedIn. You can also follow me at Jotaka Eaddy on all social media platforms. And also encourage you to follow Win with Black Women and join our network if you're interested. You can follow hashtag Win with Black Women. You can also visit our website, www.winwithblackwomen.org.
Perfect. And finally, Jotaka, what does it mean to you to be Black in business?
Oh, well, being Black in business is just being free. It's being bold, and it's being, for me, it just means that we have an opportunity to chart our own path and be a part of our own freedom.
Beautiful. Thank you so much again for being on the Black to Business podcast. This has been amazing, and thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you.